So, Ripping the Silverback, which you should be catching live every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Central on my channel or as AKA Hill versus Babyface. And we got to talking the EA deal, and we were very interactive with the chat during that time because it's interesting. A lot of people are trying to predict what's going to happen on the other side of it. With Saudi Arabia is going to come some interesting changes for sure to the type of content they are producing, but you also have the monetization aspect of it, understanding that in going private, they are inheriting, I believe the number is $20 billion in debt. So it's going to be a very interesting time. But someone brought up a fascinating thing that I think we've talked about before, but not necessarily in this context. And the brother had mentioned, like, I would love to be able to basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, purchase, my entertainment from basically his own country or the West. And it got me thinking. I'm kind of working myself through this live. Yeah, between what's happening with the EA and obviously the Japanese and the Eastern, the South Korean, the rise of entertainment in the West there through anime, manhwa, um, the video games with China even, and some of the stuff that they've produced, both not on the mobile, just on the mobile front, but even with like Wuhan, or whatever it is, Wukong or whatever the freaking whatever that game is, and I think they're going to make a number two. But a lot of you're finding out how much of your entertainment is outsourced, and it is an interesting thing. And I say this as a guy, obviously owner of his own entertainment company in the Rippaverse. I think talking about how we got here is far more important, especially if we're going to build a solution. Because I'm with you. I would love for Western markets to thrive again. I would love for there to be a Western entertainment renaissance. But we got to understand and be honest about what happened. Okay. Look, whether you hate politics like myself, it's levied upon you. What the left understood, the economic left understood, is that their influence is not political. The influence will come by way of culture. I know, here I go on another cultural rant, but it's so important. What the left understood is that if they could infiltrate your institutions, your cultural, the things that are culturally significant, authoritative, the things that people look to as they have this like perceived legitimacy about them, education, entertainment, everything in between. They infiltrated, but it didn't start 10 years ago. Perhaps it accelerated. You saw just how bad it got, especially once Trump got elected, and you saw all of these people, and they felt as if they needed to use the entertainment to like get back at him and his audience and the people that voted for him and supported him, and the people that they lumped in there anywhere, like myself. This is why I don't get so tied up in arguing at all. Even I advise that you don't do that with leftists who lump you in that category because they consider you all the same. If you value private property rights, they consider you in the same box. Though in that box may be classical liberals, people that call themselves conservatives, people that call themselves libertarian, or what brand of libertarianism they adopt, it's the same to them. What they though understood was that if they could infiltrate those institutions, they could control everything. Politics lagging indicator. That's how they maintain the control that they have in the politics, is through cultural significance. Right now, and this is a crazy thing to think about, but it's the honest to God truth. The economic right, people that value private property rights, don't really control any culture. Now, what I mean by control, I'm not saying like something that like beats their audience over the head with these sort of principles. No, it's more so in having a prominent presence there and influence. So even if you are a neutral company like a Rippaverse, being economically right or having owners and such that fit that bill, that value private property rights, you're being effective in controlling said culture. Unfortunately, the economic right don't control anything. The only thing that you may have that you can point to that's culturally significant is like the UFC, and even that is through all of the money being moved around, and even Saudi Arabia and their involvement. Look, that stuff is changing as well. Uh, but you don't really have anything else. Like you lost even country music. You don't have NASCAR. You don't have even the church. Unfortunately, has changed so much. You don't have anything. The left has seemingly everything, and we only hurt ourselves by continuing to participate in that and not building these sort of alternatives. And this is where I did disagree with a fellow, a guy on this subject matter, is that they believe that we could retake these institutions and that we should be doing that. And I disagree. I think that's wasted energy because you need to understand how long it took us to get here, and you will never achieve any sort of positive momentum in trying to re-infiltrate because that'll take a lifetime, and you can't do it. It's rotten, it's cancerous, and even like the public setup of how our corporate these mega corporate entities are ran do not favor people that value liberty anyway. It's the setup. It's not even of that of like individualism. It's just not. And I did a video talking about this. So you had the infiltration that happened, but you also had another thing that often this is gonna make a lot of y'all uncomfortable, but I am right on this. I am correct. Where a lot of people screwed up is that the economic right didn't understand the value in the culture. They placed so much of their influence and ability on thinking that politics weren't downstream of culture. They thought politics influenced the culture, which is incorrect. Any example of that is an outlier, but by and large, culture influenced the politics, not the other way around. Okay, so they placed all of their solutions and everything, every game, every battle became about think tanks trying to reason people out of positions and politics. Those were losing efforts, and it's really simple as to why that's the case. It was a losing effort because you meanwhile had a battle being or a war rather being waged upon you that you weren't even participating in. It was levied upon you from people that had influences of previous generations and the current or past through maintaining or rather gaining that cultural influence and cultural significance. And it's got so bad as to the point, think about it, all of what you look to as legitimate form of entertainment is controlled by the left, and you know I'm right. All of it. There are people that have seen successes. I have seen success. That is an outlier. By and large, like if we just take my industry, that the Western comic book industry is controlled by leftists. Most of the market share is through control of leftists. That's the reality. Now, does that mean that it was created by leftists? No, you got to understand what even uh, leftism is, especially like the more Marxian kind of form. That's the whole point. Is to infiltrate. There was always going to be a transitionary period, but the point was to get control of it first. It's like what Marx described as the dictator was is dictatorship of the proletariat. That's what he called it. So where we lost was you had people that didn't find value in it, especially the economic right. They thought it was even sometimes with some of the subcultures and entertainment childish, something not even worth caring about. That's something people like irresponsible people do. This is why you had such a movement of them like in the 90s demonizing video games and such. Talking about the violence that's associated with it, though it wasn't just them. You understand where I'm getting at. You weren't tapped into the culture. You weren't involved. So you had negligence. You had that lack of drive to have some cultural presence and being able to again control that or at least put up a fight while they were putting all of their eggs in the culture, and that's how they won that over there. So if you understand this, you'll understand why we're in the position to where, okay, as far as the Western ideal of private property rights and individualism, the East, and they're even if it's not on purpose, they've given people that alternative. Though, especially with like Japan isn't necessarily doing anything. When you have this big rise in anime, that was or in manga, that was the Americans in the West battle to lose because all of the OG anime creators anyway, and Japanese um, cats, like they were all influenced by like Walt Disney and the people like that. Like you influenced them, and they had their own spin on it. But that was, and it's not a secret either. They were influenced by the West. And what happened was they just kept doing their own thing, and eventually, because the go to became something that folks just didn't want. Well, they sought to go to the Japanese. They sought to go to the Chinese. They sought to go, which now is going to be Saudi Arabia. It was just there. So we had no presence. There was no investment by us into these places. And really, if you want to see a return to form and a renaissance, well, that's what you're going to get. I don't think it's worth it to sink so many resources in trying to retake the institutions. Like, no, just build your own and delegitimize them. That's the answer. That's the answer. It's a simple one, but not an easy one. Simple in the sense that it's easy to identify, but it's not going to be something that, well, just ups and happens. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of risk. It is. If you want to get on the other side of this, you want to see a Western creative renaissance, it's going to happen by way of some people are going to succeed, others aren't going to succeed. It's just a reality. And risk is very scary for some people. It's kind of what we talked about in River the Silverback. A great point that Az brought up is like those that want to retake the institutions. It sounds like they're looking for something more comfortable. Wow, they have an IP that I own, that I used to love. Like that's easy. What your grandparents were doing, they were being entrepreneurs. However, why did American culture, especially, hit like in the '90s and the 2000s like a brick wall? And they decided not to create, and now almost everything you consume is from products and companies that are public and have been around for several decades because we just stopped being entrepreneurs, stop creating, stop engaging in the culture. And I would love to see a return to form. I think that it's going to be a return to form. It's just going to take a lot of work. A lot. Man, one thing that the left, they understand this, but they know they're screwed. The minute the economic right starts to get disciplined and focused, they're done. Talk about about previous segment and how like really, you know, being a father and becoming one, just really, you want to live a life. Made me want to live a life worth trying to, I guess, change the world for the better because I want my child to be able to live, especially obviously their adult life, in a better world. And that's going to come with a lot of foundational work, a lot. And the best that we can do in order to do that is to create. And by create, I'm not saying just like drawing a comic book character. I'm talking about entrepreneurship. I'm talking about everything. Once we can start to focus, they're done. When we start, putting as much energy as we put in like their stuff into new stuff and alternatives, and they're cooked. On the other hand, is also like I think a lot of the battles, and again, another thing, a big time thing that just again hit me with part of this Camille mail wave, referring to Japan, right? That I got hit by in this wave when it became real that I was becoming a father or going to be a father, bro. Some of the conflicts that I see some of us on the economic right get in are just a colossal waste of our time. It's why over the last year I've stopped it. You know, obviously it's been more than that, but you get what I'm saying. Even more so, I ramped it up. If you notice, even when the most foul things kind of get said about me, I'm like, none of that's worth engaging in. It's in the grand scheme of things completely insignificant, and it's a much better use of my time to try to put my energy towards building a a better world. And I can only do what I can do. I'm not gonna It's not something like one person is gonna do. We need multiple people out there going out there and doing great things. And the lack of focus is part of the issue. But once people start to get focused and understand a lot of what we are going back and forth, meanwhile, the left is screwing up everything. And here we are going back and forth on because people got egos and they think, well, no, we got to do it my way, and my way is the only way, and everybody else is like, if y'all just got focused, that's what they do very well. They have their and they eat their own, make no mistake. But what they do very well is organize. Even in their chaos, they're organized. It's really weird. It's what they do very well because I think it's they also see a bigger picture. Um, they just have absolute terrible ideas. It's terrible. Once we get to focusing, they're cooked.